So on May 12th, a global ransomware attack dubbed WannaCry infected more than 230,000 computers in more than 150 countries. Part of Britain's National Health Service, Spain's Telefonica, FedEx, and Deutsche Bahn were hit, along with many other countries and companies. The result, in one case, thousands of British citizens had their medical appointments canceled as a result of the attack. Luckily, a web security researcher discovered an effective kill switch by registering a domain name he found in the code of the ransomware. So what does all this mean for the global issue of cybersecurity? And more importantly, what does this mean to your company going forward? We're fortunate this morning to be joined by two prominent experts who can tell us what all this means and help us sort it out and give us some practical advice on how to respond. Jeff Lauria is Vice President of Technology for iCorps Technologies. Founded in 1994, iCorps is a full-service IT consulting and IT outsourcing firm for businesses in and around Boston, New York City, Charleston, Detroit, and Philadelphia. Their customer list includes companies like Abbott Capital Investments, Boston Beer, Berkshire Partners, and AIM. So Jeff is quite familiar. Usually when I see him, I'm tearing my hair out about some kind of IT issue. Sumit Pal is with us from Princeton, New Jersey. Sumit is an IT principal at WithumSmith+Brown, known to its customers and friends simply as Withum. He's also co-practice leader of the firm's risk advisory group. Withum is one of the nation's largest regional public accounting firms with a reputation for innovation and client service. Withum employs approximately 800 people, including almost 400 CPAs. So welcome to you both. I'm going to kind of wade into this with a general question. Jeff, let me start with you. Was WannaCry an anomaly? Is it something that just kind of came out of left field, or is it part of a trend?
Thank you for the introduction, by the way. WannaCry is really a trend. It's not an abnormality. These type attacks and behaviors have been going on for years. As the internet grows, as end users, more and more people get connected, it becomes more prevalent. But we've had these problems going back 15 years. It is a wake-up call, however, to a lot of folks, really just to manage their machines and their environment. This WannaCry was preventable. It was preventable, it was foreseeable, and nobody took action. And today, there's a new threat on the landscape, hitting 200,000 computers, right? Again, preventable. So all these things are preventable. It's just taking action.
Sumit Pal, what do you think? Are these things preventable? And if they are, why aren't more people taking action to prevent them?
I think it's a situation where people look at it, oh, this can't happen to me. It's got to happen to everyone else, but not me. I'm safe. And an event like this shows with just a simple program and a bit of automation into it, how you can spread the chaos right around the world. As you rightly said, over 170 countries impacted, hundreds and thousands of systems. So it's something that we should be really wary about. As I keep mentioning to some of my customers here, that there are two types of customers in this world. One who have been infected or have had a cyber incident, and the other half who do not know that they have had one thus far. So, we just got to be very careful and very protective at all times.
So on that sobering note, our presentation is really in three parts this morning. Jeff is going to go through some actual case studies that of some companies that hopefully will look a little bit like yours to talk about the costs of all of this. Sumit has a number of practical suggestions for you to take, and then Jeff is going to come back with a few more technical discussions about some of the IT steps that you can take, and obviously the presenters will talk back and forth. So with that, I'm going to give it over to to Jeff.
Great. Thank you very much. You know, we hear about these attacks from WannaCry and how it shuts down a hospital or infects FedEx, but unfortunately that doesn't really give you a whole lot of context. So let me give you some context here. 55% of cyber attacks are focused on our victims are small to medium-sized businesses. And as you can see, over the last few years, that has grown and will continue to grow. So the abnormalities here generally are the larger businesses. Those are the ones that make the headlines, the ones you actually see and hear about. But keep in mind, there are the small businesses that you don't see and hear about. So what I've done is I've outlined 3 case studies, and we'll start off with the first one. Oh, actually, we'll start off with the first one. We'll skip this screen. This is my fault. I apologize. We'll start off with the first one. These 3 case studies took place here in Massachusetts. These companies called us to remediate some of their problems. Here's a company that's a manufacturing company. They have 150 employees, and they run 3 shifts of about 30 employees per shift. They were hit with ransomware, which resulted in a 48-hour outage. That means they've missed 2 or 3 shifts. Right? 3 shifts were missed. A total of 1,400 labor hours were lost. So unfortunately, the ransomware prevented them from actually manufacturing their items. They called in a consulting firm, us. It was 60 IT hours of consulting. And they also lost online B2B transactions. Now, that's a direct cost. Right? That's what it cost them on, day 5. We don't know what it cost them from a reputational point of view, but overall, this was a direct cost of $43,000. Right? Loss in online transaction rush orders. 60 consulting hours again, lost productivity because people could not work. And frankly, if you can't work, you can send someone home, but the fact of the matter is they're not taking vacation time, it's just a shutdown. So here's a company that lost $43,000 alone. And so that is kind of case study 1, and I'm going to come back to it later on in the presentation. We can move on to...
Jeff, I'm going to stop you just a minute. I realize that we've kind of waded into this discussion and we're using the term ransomware, and I think most people generally know what that is. But Sumit, can I ask you, can you give us a quick definition so we all know what we're talking about here?
Yes, ransomware is basically malware that is directed at computers to sort of lock up your systems and demand a ransom, and unless you pay the ransom, they will not unencrypt your machine and release it back to you. That's in very generic terms, but we'll look at a little more definition as in a few slides down the line as well.
Great, thanks, Sumit.
Sumit, great. We look at case number 2. Here's a legal firm, roughly 35 employees, 10 attorneys. They were also a victim of ransomware, where their machines got locked up and seized, in essence. There was a 96 hours of outage, 160 hours of lost billable attorney time. The attorneys were able to work in some cases, but not effectively. 64 hours of lost billable time for the paralegal team. 336 hours of lost productivity for the support staff, and 75 IT consulting hours to get them back online. This had a total cost of $90,000. Again, about $11,000 in consulting, about $16,000 in lost productivity for staff, 64 hours on paralegal at $8,000, and $54,000 of billable time. A couple of things that you also have to consider, we'll talk a little bit later about, is the reputation of these businesses. And this cannot be more echoed and highlighted in our next business case study. This is a financial firm here in Boston, 100 employees. They were actually a victim of a phishing attack. They got an email. One of their employees clicked on it. They then put the username and password in. They thought they were downloading some information. And from that one phishing attack, let me tell you what happened. So there was no outage. They didn't lose any productivity. There was no outage, no lost downtime. However, 120 hours of consulting hours were involved. A forensic team was involved, and outside legal services were involved, because this is an organization that has compliance needs. The total cost here is roughly $203,000, and it's still climbing today. 120 hours of consulting time, $35,000 in the forensic team, and outside legal services. This, however, is not just the financial impact. This team and this company now actually has to, under Massachusetts state law, has to report. So there's the impact of actually notifying your clients, there's the impact of notifying the state, and now there's the company impact. So, for example, they did everything right, but the fact is, because they were compromised, here's the financial cost. We don't know what the impact is of the data breach that's going to be down the road. So are the people who invested money with them going to continue to invest their money with them? We don't know what the loss is. And again, this was a phishing attack. Someone clicked on a link, put a username and password in, and got access to the system. So hopefully these 3 slides give you at least context into, what cybercrime, what the actual cost of cybercrime is. So at this point, I believe we're going to turn it over to
go down to Sumit. One of the things I note, though, Jeff, as we're going along here is 120 IT consulting hours.
Sure.
So you bring your team in, they're experts. That's a lot of hours. So these aren't things that you can unwind in a couple of minutes.
No. So in the prior 2 case studies, those are really manual services, right? Scrubbing machines, reinstalling, finding backups, getting them back online. In this particular case, a lot of time and effort was spent in case number 3. A lot of time and effort is spent in forensics. So going through logs, tracing them, setting, literally going through emails, figuring out the origin of the attack, figuring out who has to get notified, right? Literally, this particular individual, we had to go through, in essence, 15 years worth of emails, separate them by state, right now, because each state has different notification laws, and so that is not windable.
Yeah, got it. Sumit Pal, can you take us through some practical suggestions about how we might approach some of these threats in our business?
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Jeff. Yes, let's look at the types of attacks that can happen. And first and foremost is what we call as the password attack. Here, people are trying to guess your passwords that you use to log into your systems, to your different bank accounts, other transaction accounts, and so on. And the first thing that they try and do is to, people use dictionary words in their passwords, so they try and scan through the dictionary and do that. If that doesn't work, then they try what we call as the brute force. And here again, as the cartoon is showing you on the right, when we meet a friend after many, many years, we know who they are, but we have forgotten their name, and we try different names of them. You are Tim, you are Jack, you are Timothy, and it doesn't work. So that's an example of a brute force. You are repeatedly trying different words, or in this case, passwords, and you try that. And the third piece is what we call as the rainbow tables. These are nothing but a lot of passwords have been stolen from all over the world, and these criminals have created a master index of all passwords, which they refer to as a rainbow table. They try and see if any of those passwords match up to what you are using. So they are getting cleverer by the day, and that's what they try and do. If you go to the next slide. Yes, and again, talking of weak passwords, this is the top 20 most common passwords that people have been found to be using in times for some of their key operating accounts. The simplest, the topmost one is 1 2 3 4 5 6, and the second most popular is the word password itself. The third is 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4, and so on, as you can see. And these passwords, it does not even take anyone more than a few seconds to crack into your systems. So what we are going to be recommending to you is to try and avoid passwords such as these and use complex passwords. They should be long, they should be complex. At the same time, easy to remember. It may appear as a dichotomy there, but you got to come up, and we'll talk about ways that you can do so. And again, importantly, you got to have a different password for each application, each website, because if one application or website is compromised, you don't want someone who's stolen your password from there to attack all and open up all your other accounts. So it's going to be important to be able to do that. One particular way that has worked very successfully for me personally and for many of my friends and colleagues is to be able to come up with a phrase. Now the phrase could be lyrics from your favorite song. It could be something like, I love enjoying holidaying in Hawaii. It could be, I like visiting Disney in Orlando during the winter months, whatever it be, and pick up, and you will remember that phrase, and pick up the first word from every first letter from every word that's there, and add at the end of it, add a number, add a few special characters, again, things that you will remember, one or two of them, and you've created a complex password, one that's long, it's complex, it's not going to be easy for someone to crack through, and you will find that you will be able to adapt it for different platforms. For example, for your Gmail account, you may prefix it with a GM. For your Bank of America bank account, you may add a BOA at the end. So the same password you are able to use with slight modifications to handle multiple websites, accounts that you may have. And again, very important, do not use passwords that are proper nouns or words from the dictionary. And because if you do so, you are allowing the cyber criminals to crack through your into your account within minutes. But by coming up with more complex passwords, it can take them years and sometimes number of years before they can even using fast computers for them to crack through the password. So password is your basic compromise that can come up.
So Sumit, I think the clicking sound we hear on the other end of the webinar is people who have those passwords that you listed in your top 20 we're now all changing our passwords.
True. I mean, if you have any of these or any of, use this, we talked about a phrase. It could be the lyrics from a song, a favorite sentence of yours, or, something like that, and go ahead and change your passwords. I would encourage you. In fact, nowadays, I think it was May 4th, the first time they called it the World Password Day. They encouraged all end users to change their passwords, and this is going to happening on an annual basis going forward. So definitely go ahead and change your passwords. So that's tip number one. Moving on to the next slide, you can also go to this site. It's called IhaveBeenPwned.com, and if you key in your email address, it'll tell you whether your account has been breached in recent times or not. So, very simply you could do that. Have I been pawned? That's the website. Go and take a look at it and check out for yourself whether you've been breached or not. Again, tip number two, many of the institutions, they ask you some of the security questions, and, I would personally say, do not answer them correctly. When they ask you your mother's name, maiden name, go ahead and answer the name of your favorite aunt maybe, and put that down as your mother's name, because by putting it all in there, you are, in case this site is breached, you are going to lose all the information, and you can't change your mother's name anytime. So you would want to do that. Even things like what was the make of your first car and so on. Again, put down a car that is on your wish list rather than your first car itself. So but again, things that you got to remember. So do that. The second thing, and this is what is linked to the ransomware that is coming up, is what we call as phishing. It's almost like literally using a hook of a phishing pole itself, and here they are trying to get from you, solicit from you your username, password, and other details so that they can crack into your system. So this is where the ingenuity comes in. You will hear different terms of phishing. Another term that you may call is target phishing or spear phishing, or even it's called whaling. That means they're trying to catch the big fish. You may hear the term phishing, which is voice. Over the phone, they're trying to solicit the username and password. So these are all types of social engineering. This is one type of a very common email that has come out to a number of people. It appears it has come from the IRS and so on. But if you look closely, you will find it's not from the IRS, and IRS, as we know, does not ask you to key in all your password and username and password on their website by way of an email. If anything, they'll issue you a letter that will come by post. So it looks like that, and this is how they sort of give you a false pretense to go and click on a link. Even if you get a link, I would suggest if IRS is asking for you to do something, do not click on the link. Instead, go and open your browser and go in and enter irs.gov and see what and log in that way rather than using the link itself. Now the phishing email here, if you look at it, if you can look at it closely, you'll think it's come from LinkedIn. It looks from all angles it is from LinkedIn itself. But if you look closely, and if I take you to the next slide, you will see that it's not LinkedIn, but it's 1 instead of L. And if you don't pay close attention, you would not discover that it's from a completely different site where they are asking you to key in your details, and they're going to capture that and take you to a rogue website. In fact, if you remember the Lowe's case that had happened where they had the phishing attack, if you write down, take a paper and pencil and write down Lowe's, L-O-W-E-S. Instead of that, if you write down L-O-V-V-E-S, on first appearance, it will appear as L-O-W-E-S. And that's how they trick their people to be, clicking on those links. Again, I would say tip number 3, think before you click. Even if it is from ADP, it's a voice message, it's an e-fax saying invoices that you are there, if you're ready to be paid, there's a package coming your way. Do not use those links unless you are very, very sure that those are links that you can safely rely upon. So, again, you've heard of spear phishing, as I mentioned earlier. Here they're trying to catch the big fish. It's also called the CEO fraud. Here what happens is they get into your mail systems, they track, they know who the CEO is, they track when he's out of town, and when he's traveling and or on vacation, they send an email on his behalf from a spoofed, of course, website, and it is sent to the CFO or the controller saying that we are trying to do an M&A transaction. I will appreciate if you can wire transfer $300,000 for this, and it's a hush-hush job. Just wire make the wire transfer immediately. And lo and behold, they go and do that, and there has been this case where just with a simple email, $46.7 million went out of the window. And again, it so happened because this particular company, they were used to transferring large sums of money based on email requests, and they were, from one subsidiary to another to the parent organizations, there were wire transfers taking place at all times. And so the chief accounting officer just did not even bat an eyelid when he was requested to do so, but it came from a completely spoofed address. It wasn't from the CEO at all, and they lost. And there's been another case, surprisingly, in New York, where they fell into the trap 3 times. 3 times they went and transferred $300,000 each, so almost $1 million lost. I don't know how they did it 3 times, but they did. So it's basically a way of social engineering to make you fall for it. And once you click on them and you click on a link, this can very easily download what we saw earlier. Jeff had mentioned the ransomware, and that's when they come and lock in your systems and ask you to pay that ransom before they can open it up for you.
So Sumit, after $46.7 million as an accounting professional, you've got to know that can't be a pleasant conversation to be having with your board of directors the next day.
Absolutely. I mean, if some of you had read the Swift banking transaction where they lost $81 million, again, they had targeted to steal something like $937 million, but because of an email that came with spelling errors, and that's what caught the attention of the bankers in New York. And after the first transfer, they stopped it and they called up to check whether that was, and that's how they discovered. If those spelling errors had not been there, probably almost $1 billion would have gone out of the window just by this fraudulent email messages itself. So it is a big risk. It's a full-time, as you can see, it pays very well if you can do that smartly. And as you can see that the FBI has been warning that in the last, in those 2.5 years period, $2.3 billion had been lost through this CEO fraud or spear phishing kind of campaign. And they tell you, do not click on those links. If you get an email message from an unknown address or an unknown person, do not open it whatsoever. Next slide. Yep. So these are, some of the ransomware things that we have seen around the US. Many of them have hit healthcare associations and healthcare organizations. So, they are trying to catch, and, you will be surprised that if they can steal the healthcare information about an individual, it is worth almost 10 times the money that one would get for a credit card information. And they are using the stolen healthcare information where you will find someone is using your insurance card to carry out surgeries, and they have incurred the expenses, and all of that is being billed to your insurance company without you knowing about it. So these are big things that are happening out there and things that you should be really careful with. Tip number 5 is and to prevent issues like ransomware coming up. Even if you've got hit with ransomware, you will be able to get away without paying for it if you had a proper backup, and from that backup it's been regularly taken and you're able to restore from that. You don't have to pay the ransomware. So one is able to do that. So we definitely encourage you to ensure that you do a daily backup, keep it off-site and off the storage. If it is part of the main network, in case a ransomware comes in, you will be surprised that they are able to track down the backups, and very quickly they encrypt the backups as well, because they know that you would go to the backups to be able to come in from there. Again, use a reputable anti-malware, antivirus software, and most importantly, educate your employees on the risks that are out there, the cyber risks that are out there. And because employees are the first and the biggest line of defense, you can have the best of routers and firewalls and all of that set up, all kinds of technology that you've set up, but unless and until what I call as the human firewall, unless you educate this human firewall, your employees, you will find that they are able to breach into your systems. So that's going to be very, very important. Number 6 is to keep your software updated at all times, especially with the security patches that are released by Microsoft and other software vendors. The WannaCry ransomware attack that Chris mentioned up front, it was a case where certain patches released by Microsoft had not been applied on those systems, and very quickly they sort of preyed on those systems to attack them and throw their ransomware and lock up their system. So very important. Very quickly, if you look at it, especially if you're using a Windows laptop or a desktop, very quickly you can go in there into your setup and check mark the thing so that it allows for immediate installations anytime updates are released by Microsoft. Again, take proper care for that. Number 7, we say is do not trust a USB stick that you may find on the driveway with the words payroll data, confidential, and it sort of pricks your interest to try and see what is in it. How can I go home and plug it into my computer and take a look in there. And you will be surprised many times. This is the trick that the cyber criminals are using to infect your machines with these fake USB drives. They have fake data in them. They are not genuine. So even if you find a USB stick, do not try to pick it up and plug it into your computers. The next one is, as I mentioned, is the human firewall. We do, from HR, you will find HR does the annual thing on, different topics that they do, including sexual harassment and so on. But I'm going to say that it's going to be more important that you are able to train your employees at the bare minimum on an annual basis, but probably more frequently, and train them on how they can protect their cyber from the cyber criminals, all their data, their systems, their platforms, how they can do that. And if you teach your employees on a regular basis and you can educate them, if they can become more disciplined in their personal lives, you will find that that personal discipline will flow into the work environment itself and help you protect your organizational data and your organizational intellectual property and other important data that you may have. Do that, and definitely encourage your employees to do that. The last tip that I'm going to have for you is to monitor your third-party relationships, because you're going to be as strong as the link that a third party coming is part of the overall work platforms that you have out there. For example, you've heard of the case that had happened with Target. Now, how did Target get infected? They were by one of the HVAC vendors who were servicing their account their stores. Their systems got breached, and through that infected system, when they plugged in, came into their network, that's how the Target network got breached. So you should be able to sort of track all third parties, whether they be consultant, contractors, suppliers, vendors, distributors, agents, or even joint ventures, that you understand what kind of control, what kind of risks you are exposed to should they get infected at their end. How are they able to trap it? And if you go through all of this, you will find that in today's world, it's not as important to protect. Yes, it's important to protect, but even more important it is going to be able to detect that someone has gone into your network. And you'll be very surprised to hear that it takes almost 7 months on an average, for someone to detect that a rogue employee or a cyber criminal is into your network. And in those 7 months, you know how much havoc they can cause with your data, with your systems, your intellectual property, and so on. So if I can sum up with what we've just seen, definitely encrypt laptops, all disk drives, try and encrypt them, because even if the disk drive is stolen, your data will not be lost. Out of the millions of records that have been stolen in the last 5 to 10 years, it was found that only 4% of that data was encrypted, and therefore the cyber criminals could not get their hands on that 4% of the data. But unfortunately, the other 96% was unencrypted, and people lost a lot of valuable information over there. Security awareness training, talked about the human firewall, very important, do that. Password, as I said, keep them long, keep them complex, keep changing them periodically, and again, have a different password for every different account website that you access. You can mitigate a lot of your risks, but an important risk mitigation path is going to be by having a cyber insurance policy. Now, cyber insurance is in its infancy today, and not all insurance policies are the same. They have a lot of fine print, and you need to understand what your coverage is, and more importantly, what it does not cover for you to be able to do that. For your networks, perform regular, I will say, maybe semi-annually, the network penetration testing, because here you have ethical hackers come in and try and find weaknesses on your system. If they are able to find those weaknesses, you can go in and plug those deficiencies, and therefore make your systems more harder for someone to penetrate. Back up your data, not only back them up, but ensure that you can restore from those backup media that you have, so that many times it has been found that people have taken backups, and come that rainy day when they need to restore from that backup, they find that the backups have not been happening because they have been giving errors, but no one has been monitoring the error logs to see that the backups have not been taking place at all. So do the backups and do the recovery as well. And last but not least, look at your third party supply chain, and look at it and make sure that they are protecting their systems, their platforms at their end, because you are part of the overall environment and ecosystem out there.
Excellent.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sumit. And at this point, I just want to remind folks that if you have questions for Jeff and Sumit, to text them in the box. We're going to ask those questions at the end of the formal presentation. Jeff, before you get started, Sumit really kind of draws this thing where you not only have to be aware of what's going on in your own company, but on the one hand, you have employees who now have laptops and smartphones and carrying information with them, and on the other hand, your third-party suppliers and partners. You must see this a lot in your work.
We do. I think the biggest attack vector ultimately is your employees and their devices. So making sure that those employees and those devices are managed and under control is key, right? The other part is with third-party vendors. Here in Massachusetts, we actually have a requirement that third-party vendors give attestation knowledge that they are secure and they have a policy in place, right? It was actually something I believe you guys were very instrumental on many years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, with the privacy regulations here. So, Massachusetts actually has some very good policies and procedures and laws around protecting data and protecting end users. So, yeah, we do run into that constantly. And one of the challenges is, and the reason I gave these case studies is one of the challenges is this technology we're going to talk about momentarily is available. It is easily implemented. It will, and the technology that I touched upon today will really have prevented the 3 case studies that I gave. But what happens is a lot of companies look at that as a cost and they're not willing to invest that cost. And that cost is literally pennies a day. But as you can see, the cost of not doing so is tens of thousands of dollars, right? And what I would say is when you bring an employee on, a new employee, the cost of bringing that employee on, right? You get them a computer, you get them a workspace, a phone, a cell phone, whatever the case may be, build in the security to that cost of bringing a new employee on. So just to kind of talk a little bit more and enhance on what Sumit has gone and talked about, a couple of things you want to do, 5 easy steps, 4 easy steps here. Assess and lock down your environment. The first thing I think all companies should do is understand what their environment looks like. You'd be amazed that in today's cloud-based services, for example, Office 365, unless you're paying attention, someone can go out, grab himself an iPhone, put their email address in, and now have email on their phone, and you have no idea that that's actually happening, right? That is almost something, it's almost similar to something called shadow IT, where individuals work around the system, and unfortunately, they don't do it for malicious reasons. They do it to get their job done, but what happens is IT has no idea what's going on, right? And that becomes a vector and a gateway for a breach. So look at your environment, lock it down. Cloud-based services, amazing. Today we have services that are on the cloud that are easily executed to most small to medium businesses that were only available to the enterprise. And leveraging cloud-based services to enhance your security is going to be fundamental. We'll talk a little more about that. And I couldn't agree more with Sumit, educating and training employees at all levels. They don't know what they don't know. You can't hold people responsible for something they have no idea about. So educating them. I'm going to put a little twist on that a little bit later, and a strong business continuity plan. If the 2 companies that I mentioned earlier had strong business continuity plans in place, they would not have had 96 hours of downtime. They would have been up and running within a few hours. So I think those are a couple areas that we'll talk about. And let's talk about what technology is available. As Sumit said, end users, passwords, usernames, email addresses. Identity management is key. Your end users hold the key to your kingdom. So protecting them is fundamental. We all think about protecting the data, and that is key, but protecting them is fundamental. So implementing strong identity services is going to be very, very important. And I'll talk a little bit more about identity services and how they can help, right? URL protection, very, very simple. Right? When someone clicks on a URL inside an email, let's make sure that's getting scanned. Let's make sure it's being checked against something for some sort of threat. Not going to capture all the threats, but it's going to capture a majority of them. Web filtering, big problem. A lot of folks, a lot of companies let people go anywhere they want. Here's another significant threat. But with web filtering, let's also ensure that your firewall has something called Unified Threat Management. It is also scanning for threats. Advanced threat protection, very, very important. I'll talk a little bit about that on another slide. But advanced threat protection looks at what your end user is doing, looks at their, where they're going, their surfing habits, things of that nature. Monitoring, again, is key. You don't know what you don't know. And data backups. Making sure you have a strong data backup is fundamental. And as someone said, testing it. So if we talk about identity management, identity management really is about protecting the end user, right? It's protecting them, making sure that their username and password and where they're logging in from and what they're doing is really authorized. So let me give you an example. Wouldn't it be very, very nice? Someone brought up a screen about have you been pawned. You go there, you put your email address in, and it will show you if your email address has been associated with a company who has a data loss or a data breach. But you have to go out and do that. You have to do it yourself. Wouldn't it be very nice if there was a service that would actually monitor your username and password, and if it found out it was breached, it would actually notify you? That's part of identity management. So there's a service provided by Microsoft, a cloud-based service, that will keep track of username and passwords, scan the web every single day, and find if it's been compromised, let you know. Really key and fundamental here. Also identity services, when you're logging in from a foreign location. So most of these attacks, be it a phishing attack, ransomware, do not initiate from the United States. They are outside the United States. So I'm sitting here in Boston in the AIM offices, and I log into my email account. And then about 5-10 minutes later, someone logs in my email account in California. That is impossible. Can't happen, right? So using strong identity services, they'll shut down the account. That is a proactive approach. So for example, if that financial firm who actually had the phishing attack had this in place when they logged in from the Ukraine, and that's where they logged in from, the system would have shut them off, wouldn't have let them in, and would have saved that company $203,000 a day, right? All that would have cost them was $5 a month for the user. That's it. So this is where you got to kind of look at what's here. Streamline automated patching, absolutely. One of the things that is critical here is Windows-based machines, and any machine, Macs, Windows, they need to be patched. Again, WannaCry 3 months ahead of time. Patch was available in March. We didn't see any problems happening for 3 months down the road. Machines were not patched. So streamlining that patch management is also very important, and leveraging technology that's there. And there is technology available that will help you patch systems automatically, push out patches immediately when there's a problem. And again, these are pennies per user that will save so much. If you think about this, we just talked about identity management, and identity management would have saved that financial firm $203,000. Patching, there are so many companies that over the weekend when this broke on Friday spent hundreds of dollars and hundreds of man hours over the weekend patching. An automated system would have done this. There are folks that work from home that never actually patch. Forcing patch management is key. I think on next screen. Okay, zero-day threats. This is very interesting. 146 days is the average that an attacker is in a system before they get recognized. And think about this. This is not a number we just made up. Yahoo reported data breaches that took place in 2013 and 2015 recently, this year. So that was a multi-year event, right? So being able to get inside and understand what's going on with your systems is key. So leveraging technologies such as Microsoft Windows 10 Enterprise with Advanced Threat Protection, and that actually monitors systems, monitors user behavior. It just ensures that you have insight into what's going on is very, very important. These are cloud-based services that are easily implemented. Now, if we were to, for example, to use a Windows 10 Enterprise machine with Advanced Threat Protection, well, a couple of things wouldn't have happened. WannaCry wouldn't have happened because the system automatically takes care of itself. And if configured properly, ransomware wouldn't have happened. Because these technologies, for example, you can set the machine up only to run authorized applications. So when these ransomware and malware, even viruses come in, they don't have the ability to run. It's here, it's easy, and it's pennies, but people don't want to implement the technology because there's a cost associated with it. I buy a Windows 10 machine from Dell, it comes a Windows 10 Professional, I think I'm great. And that you know what, that's great, but antivirus is just one component, but it's not the end-all or be-all. And because I will tell you, the two prior companies all had antivirus, and still got stung. And antivirus was up to date. So those are some of the other technologies. URL protection, very, very simple. You know, the fact is, today, I think the biggest attack vector on any company is email. That is one of the biggest attack vectors itself, right? People click on links in email. So, folks, there are so many different vendors out there, Mimecast being one of them, Microsoft being another, that provide URL protection, where when you click on the link, now, it will take a second or two, and this is some of the negative feedback I get. You click on the link, your window opens up, your browser opens up, and in the Mimecast case, it says Mimecast something, and there's maybe a 5 or 6 second delay before you actually get to your website. But the fact is that 5 or 6 second delay can save thousands of dollars and help lock down your system. The good part is these are tools that are not just limited to on-prem. And what I mean by that is when people work remote, because we really have workers now that are all over the place, workers are consumers of information. They consume information. They'll do it on their iPad. They'll do it on their iPhone, their Android phone. They'll do it at a bus station or on an airplane. These technologies, these protections go along with the end user. Excuse me. Next one is to talk about web filtering and threat monitoring. So web filtering is important today more than ever. And, you know, 5, 6 years ago we did web filtering because we didn't want people to go to the Facebook, and we didn't want to go to social media, or we didn't want to go to a gambling site or an adult site or a shopping site. And that's still very important. However, web filtering today really is about threat management and threat mitigation. If you can prevent an end user from going to an inappropriate site, right, to prevent them from going to a site that may be known to have, you know, bad information on it, right, and you do that at the firewall level, which we refer to as a gateway level, with a tool called Unified Threat Management. It looks at the website, makes sure that it's not on a blacklist. It looks at the content and the data streams coming in to make sure it's not infected. Those are services, those are layer protection that you can do that is very simple, very transparent, and will definitely give you a peace of mind. And also look at some providers that offer a managed security solution. And here's what I mean by that. A lot of businesses will install a firewall, and they'll look at it as kind of a cable box. You put the firewall in, and it just works, and you forget about it. You never touch it, right? It just works. Cable box just works. You never think about it. You never patch it. You never do anything. Well, again, I'll refer back to here in Massachusetts. There is kind of requirements that says that, you know, you patch your firewalls. Your antivirus definition is up to date. So unless you have a dedicated team that actually comes and looks at the firewall and maintains the firewall and the subscriptions and so forth, you're probably not doing what you should be doing. Look at a managed security solution that actually takes care of that and takes that away from your hands, makes it responsible, makes the other company responsible for that. Let's talk about worst case scenario. Business continuity. A couple of things here. Backups are great. However, backups are just backups, right? So it is important to have, as Sumit said, very important to have backups. Have backups that are on site. Okay, so in case a server gets attacked, for example, and the server shuts down. Let's talk about a ransomware. A file server gets attacked. All the files on the file server have now been encrypted. All right, we're going to go back to that legal firm. All the files have now been encrypted. They cannot work. They have a couple of options. They can pay the ransom, which, by the way, never pay the ransom. What that does is people paying the ransom just makes this a more effective threat and a more effective crime. If you think about this, I didn't put a screen in here. Cybercrime this year, $600 billion worldwide. To give you some context of that big, large number, it is more than the gross national product of the Dominican Republic. It is equal to 3.25% of the gross national product of the United States, and is projected to be $2 trillion in 2020. So don't pay the ransomware, right? Because all that's doing is just making it more profitable, making it more people wanting to do it. So hybrid, have backups on site that can be turned into virtual machines. So if you do get attacked, great, you deal with that, you spin up a virtual machine, and away to go. Also make sure your backups are off-site, right? Off-site is very, very important. As someone said, and I'll agree with them, you know what? They can get into your backups online. They get into your backups on-prem, but they can't get into your backups online. So make sure you have a tiered approach, a hybrid approach. Look at a managed service provider that will actually look at your backups every single day and make sure they actually work. Eliminate downtime. This is very key. Typically, backups are done at midnight. So let's say about noontime you have an event. Now, what happens between midnight and noon the next morning? That is referred to as recovery point objective, meaning how long can you afford to lose data? So in the model I just gave you, there potentially could be 12 hours of data if I had to return to a backup that's unavailable. So for some companies that works. Other companies say, you know what, I can lose 2 hours worth of data. So sit back and think about how much data you can afford to lose. Now, if you're a web company, you're doing transactions constantly, you can't afford to lose any data. So your recovery point objective may be minutes. But you know what, if you're a company that is a real estate company, maybe you can afford to lose 2 or 3 hours worth of data or 4 hours. Now your recovery point objective is 4 hours, right? And how much downtime? If you were to go down today at 8 a.m., how much time is it going to take between, or how much what's your tolerance for downtime? Meaning if you go down at 8 a.m., when do you need to be back up and running? That's called recovery time objective. So figure out how much data you can afford to lose, how long you can be down, and then what happens is you build a solution around that. So backups are critical. This is a screen I like the best. All right, educating your employees. Now, technology's evolved. The workforce age has dropped, has changed, and we're still doing security training in the old-fashioned way, meaning that we're going out and we're hiring a company to show people videos and then having to click a button saying they watched the video and they got a certificate and away you go. And we do that once or twice a year, right? That doesn't work. Just does not work at all, right? It is very important that you train your employees, and my suggestion is training in security is an ongoing event, right? Get your marketing department involved, right? Make it social. Get notices, newsletters out. Hey, thread of the day, all right, a thread of the week. Get that out to the employees. Get them involved. Engage them. Don't send them a video and tell them to watch it and click here. Engage your employees in the training. Make it fun, make it social. Think about this. The workforce has changed, right? There's not a company you go to today that doesn't say, go to my Facebook, go to my LinkedIn, go to my whatever. So use that kind of medium to get security training out there. Also, use a third-party service to do periodic testing. What I mean by that is there are companies, like I'll pick on one, Sophos, for example, who will send customized email phishing attacks once a week, once a month, and we'll test your employees and give you back those results. So don't just check the box. So a lot of companies will just check the box. Hey, do you have security awareness training? Oh, absolutely I do. Here, let me check the box. Engage. This is an ongoing process. Cannot be once a year, twice a year. It literally has to be ongoing. And be creative. Really be creative. Get the creative minds on how to do this and engage in those folks, and you'll see great results. A couple of things here I do want to point out. Ransomware. So July 11th, revamp of HIPAA guidelines. Ransomware now is a reportable incident. All right. Also, ransomware, and this is something I strongly recommend you talk to your compliance officers about. Think about this. Ransomware infects your system, so there is something getting into your system, some sort of virus, some sort of software is in your system. They've encrypted all your files. They've taken it hostage. That ransomware then goes out and talks to a server to get some keys. I won't bore you with the technical details. However, your system has been breached. And in most states that have, actually all states but 2, have breach requirements and notification requirements. So HIPAA has made it very clear, but I will tell you the ransomware, again, talk to your folks, talk to your compliance folks. Ransomware is considered a breach. So keep that in mind. So now it's not just a matter of I got infected, I got to pay $90 or whatever the case is. Now I got to report. And report affects the business culture, affects the business image. So do take a look at that. And I think the last screen was, oh, no, not a problem at all. There is no excuse today. You know, I hate using this, being penny wise and pound foolish, but investing a little money, all right, will prevent all these from taking place. All of this stuff, all of these attacks, cybercrime, you know, ransomware, malware, viruses, phishing, they all go after one thing, a weakness in the system. And the weakness in the system could be patching, it could be the end user, it could be the applications in which you're using, your inability to monitor. That's where they thrive. It is, you know, you put a lock on your door so people can't get in, but no one's willing necessarily to put a lock in their IT. So there is no way, there are ways to avoid all this. There's going to be no guarantees, but there are ways. So again, don't be penny wise, pound foolish. You take the time and money to invest. It's not overly difficult. It's not overly expensive. You just have to use the right technology.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. We do have a couple of questions. Sumit, you know, Jeff was talking about the breach at Yahoo, and I think for companies, for smaller companies, they think to themselves, wow, if Yahoo gets hacked, how can I, you know, I'm a manufacturing company with 25 people, how can I prevent this? But it seems as if what both you and Jeff are saying is you can do it, and it's not a break the bank kind of situation, and a lot of it is cultural within your company.
That's right, Chris. You know, it's got to do with what we call as the right sizing of the controls. You know, you can't be implementing something at your organization assuming that what GE does, you're going to do the same thing, but you can do them by right sizing the controls. And of course, a lot of it is to do with education and common sense. So definitely one can be smart with the investments. Everything can't be a, you know, be all end all kind of a thing. But yes, with smart implementation, smart technologies, and there are lots of options available today. Even the smaller and medium-sized organizations can protect themselves. Again, it's a question of recognizing that you are not 100% protected at any stage. I keep saying that a breach or a cyber incident, it's not a question of if it will happen, it's just a question of when it will happen. And it's going to be equally important for people to be aware that, you know, when it does happen, it will also be, you know, take care of the whole incident so that you don't, you know how to react to this. You are not surprised. You know your follow-up actions. You have an incident plan in place. So all of that goes to support the whole, you know, practice that you can protect yourself.
Another question, Jeff. For manufacturing companies today, they not only use systems to manage the company, but they also use systems to actually run the manufacturing process. If I'm a manufacturer, are my floor systems that are running my machinery, are those at risk as well with all that?
So that's a great question. So if we go back to case study one of the fundamental flaws in this company's design was that we'll call it the corporate system, right? Their business systems were actually connected to their production system, their manufacturing systems. And what happened, this wouldn't have been so bad if it just happened to corporate and production could keep going. What happened is it started in corporate and bled over to production. So two things. One is, in manufacturing firms, whenever possible, there should be a separation, physical ideally, logical, meaning, you know, firewall, whatever the case may be, of systems. So corporate doesn't touch production. Now, typically, if production systems are isolated from the internet, then their risk is minimal. Right? Let's go back to hospitals for a second. One of the biggest concerns with hospitals is a lot of medical equipment are running Windows XP. That's what they are, right? It's because the process of approving a new OS can take years. They're running Windows XP, and it's one of the reasons I believe Microsoft released a patch out of left field, frankly, for that. So the answer to your question is, if you do it right, they should be isolated, and manufacturing systems should never touch the internet. And if they don't touch the internet and they don't touch corporate, then there's not a problem at all.
Great. Well, that is all the time we have today. On the slide in front of you is contact information for both Jeff and Sumit. And I would invite you, as we plan to, again, send these slides to all of you. If you have follow-up questions for either of our presenters this morning, feel free to contact them. As you can tell, they're quite knowledgeable and would be certainly willing to answer your questions. Once again, thanks to Jeff, thanks to Sumit, thanks to Celia for fielding the questions, and thanks to all of you for being with us. Have a good day. Bye.